Ah, the sunny, sultry Sydney skyline. Not a bad place to be stuck in ISO. Somewhere I'd prefer not to be is possibly Melbourne, where it's grey and cold and raining most of the time, but it is the home of our next guest. He's a favourite Aussie actor, former module, and likes fast things. Please welcome Scott McGregor.
Hey, Kate, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm very good. Did you hear me giving beef to Melbourne just then? I was like throwing you shade.
It doesn't surprise me one bit. You know what? We had a horrible storm last night, but the sun's shining, which is good today.
I know, it actually looks really nice there right now, which is a surprise.
Yeah, it is a surprise. It's you never know what you're going to get with Melbourne, but you know we live with it.
True. So you're in ISO. I'm in ISO. How are you keeping sane? What are you doing a lot of?
I feel like I'm running a daycare, to be honest. I've just had, I've got a little boy who is now 4 months old, and I've got a little girl who's 2.5. So it's been tough. It's been tough.
I can imagine.
But it's actually been great at the same time. It's really, you got to remember, and I guess remind yourself sometimes that as horrible as this situation is, you got to remember the good things, you know, the positives. So we've obviously spent a lot of time together. I love being a dad. It's awesome. I'm just a big kid anyway. So, and that's a part of the isolation too. And what's been great is you do all the little simple things that you never did when you were younger, when you have kids. So you know, I built a little train track the other day, and you know, I built a little fairy house for my daughter, which we put out the back, and the simple things, which is great. So
yeah, it's kind of. You've been working on your garden as well. That looks that's looking pretty good. You're doing some paving out there.
Yeah, thanks. No, I've done heaps. I've got 3 older brothers who are all tradies, so I kind of, I guess, grew up looking up to them and watching them do their things, and they're incredible with their hands. So I've renovated a house before and built one, so I've got a little bit of a knowledge. But if I don't know how to do something, I like to figure it out. So
I do want to ask you this question: were you one of the toilet paper hoarders?
No, definitely not. No, absolutely.
I'm trying to find one. I can't find one. Do you know any?
You know what? I remember going to the supermarket and picking up a roll and feeling bad about it. Like I couldn't. I don't know. It was just such a weird. How weird is this going to be in 10 years' time or 20 years' time when we look back on this? How crazy.
Totally. But let's get into a bit more of you. Modelling. So you kicked off after school with modelling. You did study, obviously, as well. Because I was a model too. I don't think we ever modelled together, but I remember doing some pretty whacked out gigs. Do you remember any of the wackiest modelling gigs you ever had to do?
I can't even begin to describe how many weird situations I found myself in. I mean, I remember being in a shop front window as like a human mannequin with a girl at one point. I remember thinking, this is not what I had in mind. But I actually, you know what, I was thinking about this the other day. I had a couple of jobs that I walked out on only because it just wasn't, something wasn't adding up. And it was one of those scenarios where I'm not sure I can go into too much detail, but it's just, look, there were a lot of guys. There was one in particular where it was shot around a pool. It was meant to be for like an editorial or for a magazine, and there was a lot of guys in Speedos around a pool, and not a lot of professionalism. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. This just all seems a bit weird to me. And I said, look, guys, I've got an emergency. I've got to run. So I made up an excuse and had to leave. But there were also, I had a couple of casting calls one in particular that I went out to turned up at a house in the middle of nowhere. And what's crazy is, you know, sometimes they put out these casting calls and you can't expect the modelling agencies to know whether they're legit or not. So I've turned up to this guy's house and I felt like I was in a film about to be murdered. I was like out of there as quick as I possibly could. And I rang my agency saying, please don't send anyone else there. But but they were probably the worst of the bunch.
And then there was, in 2005, I think, or 4, Price is Right. What was that experience like?
Crazy. I mean, I sort of, when I got into modelling, I had a friend who had done a TV commercial, and I was working in retail, and I think he earned like 10 grand or something. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. And I was like, well, I should get into this. So I went and saw an agency, and it just kind of, I thought if I can get one TV commercial, I'll be wrapped. And then they just sort of started coming in, and then Price is Right called me up, and they had one guy who was like their go-to guy. They had about 4 girls, but 1 guy. So they used to bring in a guy every now and then to show up, and I did a couple of stints on that. And then that got the axe, and not long after, Temptation formed, which was a revamp of Start of the Century. And the same producers went on to do that, and they hired me as their showcase model. But it was fun. It was just.
Was it really loose, or was it just like they kind of pumped them out?
It was very professional on set, but what was loose was the old Channel 9 building in Melbourne in Bendigo Street. I'm so grateful that I got to work there, and I saw the end of the great era of television, and I'm really sad that it's not around anymore. It's the parties were crazy, and it was awesome to be part of it. And I still bump into guys, that are still in television, and we have a good laugh about some of the parties we had. But those are the days. I mean, I sound old. I'm pushing 40, but yeah, it was just such a crazy time back then. I think maybe we got away with more. I don't know. But it was fun.
There wasn't social media, mate. We can't do anything these days. But
That's right.
So from there, you've gone on, you've done Offspring and Underbelly and Winners and Losers, and also Neighbours, which is our iconic show. If you're an Aussie, you've obviously seen it, and it's fantastic. But you went from the 6-month kind of contract to what ended up being around 10 years.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
That's quite an effort. It's probably not what you were expecting.
No, I wasn't. No, and again, I never really expected to make acting my career. But I fell in love with it really quick. And so after all my little guest roles I was doing on those shows that you mentioned, Neighbours gave me the opportunity, which was only meant to be 3 weeks, I think. And it sort of went really well. And I ended up doing about 12 months before. I've got to be honest, I didn't love it. And so I kind of just thought, look, I might pull the pin early, and I left after 12 months and went to the States, and I had this really bad breakup, and I wanted to get out of Melbourne. So I went and lived in Los Angeles, and, I got the green card and did all that. And then I had Neighbours ringing me, asking me to come back. So I would go back and do a little stint, and then go back to LA, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And then I think I got to the point where I was sick and tired of not really earning much money and doing the whole LA thing and trying to make it. And then Neighbours asked me to come back again for another month or 2, and the producer this time around kept asking me to stay, and I kept saying yes. And I had a girlfriend, and girl I fell in love with, who's now my wife, and it just feels like it's happened so quickly. But yeah, it's been about 10 years. I think I was 29 when I started, and I'm 39. So
you play a detective, Mark Brennan. What's the closest run-in you've ever had with the police or cops?
Oh, I've had a couple. Yeah. Look, let's just say it was all research.
Maybe some of the older ones. Maybe not that recent one.
No, let's not talk about that. No, look, I'm really good at getting myself into trouble every now and then. I've had a couple of run-ins with police. Can I tell you a funny story? At the end of my stint recently, I had my producer come up to me in the hallways, and knowing I love golf, he said to me, "Hey, we've had some stuff stolen recently," and I was in shock to start with. I thought, he's going to blame me for this. And he said, one of the things that got stolen was your character set of golf clubs, Mark Brennan's golf clubs. And I'm thinking, this looks really bad because A, I play the character, and B, I love the sport. And I said, mate, I promise you I didn't take them. And he said, no, that's right. I know you didn't take them. It was someone else. But the detectives who are looking into this are huge Neighbours fans, and they love you and they want a photo. They're in my office. So we ended up having a photo together. It was quite funny. But for a moment there, I thought, I'm in strife.
better to be on that side of it than the other side, right?
Yeah. Right.
And what's it like on the set of Neighbours? Like, do you get your script that morning? Like, what's the catering like? Is it a big factory? Like, is it cool to be on there?
Yeah, look, it's you forget really quickly how amazing that place is. It really is a big machine. Everyone calls it a big machine, and it is. It's insane. There's been some really good articles come out recently about them going back into production. I think New York Times wrote an article about them, which was amazing. But we would get the scripts probably, I want to say 3 weeks prior to filming, but you're always reading, the scripts that you're filming that week. So, but always, would skip over them and make sure I knew what was coming up. We used to do storyline meetings where they would tell us what was coming up, and we could maybe have some input every now and then. But but then there's so many things that happen for whatever reason where something wasn't quite working. So we would have to change the script on the fly, and you would get amendments as you're walking on the set. And sometimes, I remember one day in particular, I think I'd filmed about 14 scenes one day. It was the end of a week. And if you have 14 scenes in 1 week, it's a lot. And so I had a huge week. I did 14 scenes that one day, and we had about half an hour left. And they gave me a scene that I didn't know. And it was about 3 pages of dialogue. And you don't know how you get through it, but they call cut, yep, complete, and you walk out going, I'm not sure what I just did, but looks like that's going to air. So, but then, on the other hand, we have some really good time and really good rehearsal time and that sort of thing. So you take the good with the bad, and you make the editor your best friend, so that they make you look good.
That's so true. Yeah, you got to get behind the scenes there. And obviously ISO and Corona has kind of screwed up everyone's year, right? So did you have plans this year? Like, what was going to keep you busy? Because you kind of wrapped Neighbours at the end of 2019.
Yeah, it was the start of this year I finished. I think it was in February. It's only been about 3 or so months, but I'm sure as is for everyone, it's a hugely difficult time. Everyone's had plans and stuff, but I guess the only good thing I can take out of it is that we had my son in January. So we were kind of both my wife and I were on paternity leave, so to speak. So we've just been kind of looking at it like, we were never going to be working anyway. So my wife doesn't go back till August or September, and fingers crossed that happens. But and then for myself, I was never going to assume that I would be getting a role within 3 months. So I've got a lot of people sort of saying to me at the moment, are you getting worried? And I'm like, well, it's a worrying time, and productions have halted. But, there's been a couple of auditions here and there, and one I'm still waiting to hear back on, which is great. And look, you just got to be patient. I think that's the biggest thing about my industry is that it's good to be in work for, when you've got it. But then you've also got to just be patient when you're not, and fingers crossed, hopefully the right thing comes up sooner rather than later.
What would be that dream gig for you at the moment with your circumstances?
Look, I just really want to. I just can't wait to sink my teeth into something else, whether it be a comedy or an action thing or something on horseback. Like, it'd be great. It's just something a bit different. I think the great thing is, I've been getting all these scripts in for auditions, and you get to read the whole film or the whole series or the whole episode, and you just get so excited about the you might have that opportunity to be playing that character, and that's what excites me the most. There's so many different shows coming up that are all awesome, whether it be something Australian or American or English or whatever. It's I just can't wait to kind of sink my teeth into it.
Cheers, Scott. Thanks for chatting. We wish you the very best in your acting and everything else that you're up to. And we'll catch you next time on Build in Isolation. Thanks, bye.